Sure. The bottom button. Just touch it and it should go down. Thank you, Daisy.
How's that?
Fair enough. Everyone see it? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Yeah, we'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Matt Hugart with Kittleson and Associates. I think most people know me from other projects or endeavors throughout the region. I'll be the consultant project manager for the TSP update for the city. And I'll just start with to my right. We'll go around the room and then I'll sort of queue up the virtual participants to do a brief introduction. I'm going to ask Mike, can you go one more slide before I do that? All right, two more, sorry. Okay, so when you introduce yourself, say who you are, who you're representing from a professional capacity, and then if you could talk about at least those three questions on the screen there. So the first one is, how do you typically use Boardman's transportation system? If it's as simple as I just drive through it, that's fair enough. If it's more complicated, such as I bike and walk and do everything with it, great. Second question would be, what does a successful transportation system in Boardman look like to you? And this would be kind of forward thinking. So kind of what do you feel like your vision is for the city for it to be successful over the next 20 years? And then third one is kind of what are the key issues that we should be focusing on with this TSP update? So to my right, Isa, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Isa Ginglis. I'm also part of the consultant team, and I'll be doing a lot of the analysis and inventory work on the TSP. So I'm looking forward to hearing your guys' input.
Perfect. I'm Tori Griggs. I am the CEO of the Boardman Chamber of Commerce and the Boardman Community Development Association. So I've been doing a lot of work on transportation in our community through my work. I normally drive. I have worked with the county on their busing transportation as a loop. And I feel like a successful system should be, Boardman should have road, bike, and walking trails that connect, somehow safely connect our north and south side, that we can allow flow from both sides of the community over and back safely because of our freeway that divides us. It's been a real safety issue. And so when we do projects for Boardman Community Development Association, for instance, we've done basketball courts on the north side, but we also do basketball courts on the south side. So we don't have kids having to go back and forth, which that's a bonus also, but it's also kind of a limitation because some kids they want to go and be on the other side. So now we have kids trapped going across on and off ramps and stuff like that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tori.
Jacob Kane, Director of Engineering for so not just myself, but our users, I guess, we've got a really integral system between the city of Boardman and our jurisdiction and the neighboring county. State, we use the facilities to move employees, products, goods, different major shipping channels come through Boardman, as you guys may know. So the system's used very heavily on everything that the port does. A successful transportation system to me is a safe, efficient mechanism to move people and goods and products throughout the region. As being a kind of a transportation hub in the area, Boardman's very important to be able to get all those things to and from the interconnecting freeway, the river, the railroad transportation systems, all that plays together. So that's a successful system to me. And the biggest issue, maybe not an issue, I guess, but the TSP should be, I guess, flexible enough to accommodate changing conditions over the next 10 to 15 years. You guys may know, we're going to continue to see large investments and diversification of our industrial type uses of the port seas over the next 10 to 15 years, and having a TSP that can adequately shift and change and be able to adapt to the changing circumstances over the next few years is really important.
Yeah,
Because
thank,
because we have a potential on that, we have a potential to really have a huge growth in our population.
Yeah.
And it may not happen in the next 5, it may happen 10 or 15, but I foresee a big growth in population here.
seems like it's already growing.
It is. So I just don't want us to like, not accommodate that growth, or you've dealt with it other cities where you have congestion.
I guess the biggest issue that I'm now I'm sitting here thinking about is being able to fund.
Yeah.
The TSP issues that are gonna be, I guess. Brought to you over the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's a big question for just about every community out there. Thanks.
Eric Imes, Public Works Director for Morrow County. At Public Works, we use Boardman roads to get from county road to another county road that goes to the city. Pretty much just drive through. We do work with the city though, somewhat during, especially during plow season. I can't really expand more on what a successful transportation system looks like, and what Jacob said, and hit all the high points on that, I agree with him. Issues as far as the county is concerned with the TSP and a 20-year plan, it'd be nice, and Carl and I have talked a lot about this. It's addressing the city-county roads, streets, and maybe cleaning that up in the next 20 years would be great. I know it's not easy, it takes time. But if that's something that could be addressed, that would be great. The future of Mullen County. For sure. And then, of course, this, it's not county, but I see the safety issues that they mentioned. And we're working on them.
Which, both interchanges or just Main Street or?
Especially the one at Tower, the Main Street has gotten so busy already. It's crazy, what the changes in the last 10 years have been. And then some others that aren't in the city. That will work.
Okay. Next.
I am Heather Baumgartner, city council for City of Boardman, and I drive to work, but I also walk quite frequently. What I could see being a successful transportation system in Boardman would be to make sure that we have sidewalks that go along Main Street on both sides. Good lighting would be good, because we do have people that walk when it's dark. We've got roads in this town that haven't been paved for, I've lived here since 1981, and I live over on Cottonwood Loop, and I have yet to see that road even being paved even just once in the time that I've lived here. So we have a lot of streets that need to be updated, but that goes back to where the key issues, funding, which is exactly right. For the safety, we'll go back to the safety at the interchange. Something that nobody else has said is the bridge. What are we gonna do about that bridge? We know that it's too low, and we have a lot of increased traffic that are coming on that off ramp just to get over the bridge because they can't get under it. And so we need to address that as well.
You're talking about the I-84 overpass bridge? Yeah.
All of the windmills that are coming up and down this road, they're coming over the bridge, and they end up blocking traffic between the north and south main because they can't get under the bridge. And so that is a huge safety issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you, Heather.
My name is Kate Kennedy, and I'm with the planning department. There within 4 months, and this is my first transportation planning meeting, but I look forward to learning more about it. You brought up some very good points about the bridge, about blocking traffic between north and south. Those are definitely key issues that I see. I don't live in Boardman, I just drive through, and I think the on and off.
I'm Daisy Goble. I'm also with the county. I'm gonna be switching to like a part-time position with the county. So Caitlin will take over this position on TAC, but I'm happy to participate. And I'm also a Boardman resident, and I actually frequently walk my body to get to the playground and stuff. So I drive to work and stuff, but I also try and walk. A successful transportation system is a connected transportation system and a safe transportation system. So to the extent that we're not like afraid of getting hit by cars and like that there's like safe speeds and safe intersections. I think that's super important, not just for, vehicle users, but also for people who like to walk and like, you know, walk with their kids places. Like someone else mentioned sidewalks, that's definitely like an issue, and it's like 100 feet of sidewalk and like 100 feet of no sidewalk. And then I say connectivity because that's also a problem when there's like one road closure that, and then you have to drive like 3 miles out of your way to get to your destination. So making sure there's like multiple routes to get places and connected neighborhoods, connectivity to like different commercial centers and things like that. So I would say those are the key issues, obviously, like safety and connectivity.
Great, thanks, Stacey.
Yeah.
Okay, in no particular order, started with the online, Alex Hattenauer.
Hi, folks. Yeah, my name is Alex Hattenauer. I'm representing Hattenauer Distributing Company as a local business owner. I don't particularly use Boardman's transportation system a great deal. I live in the Dalles, but my customer base and vendor base greatly appreciate using it and having access to and from the location, as well as some of my neighbors. 2 and 3 kind of hit on the same, safe, efficient, and equitable will kind of answer both 2 and 3 for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Next, Patty Perry.
Hello, everybody. I'm with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, Planning Director. And in our planning department, we also manage and operate the kayak public transit system. And that's why I'm here is to, and why, how we would be using Boardman's transportation system would be through our public transit operations, which we will be soon utilizing. What does a successful transportation system looks like? One that can provide the whole range of services for the community and also provide connections to other communities. What key issues should they address? The TSP address? Well, once the thorough analysis of the characteristics of the community is established, then identify the problem areas that need to be addressed, and then formulate a plan on how to address those.
Great. Thank you, Patty. Devin, Erie.
Yeah, that's me. I'm glad to be here. For a while, it didn't look like you were going to let me in, so I'm happy that you let me in. So I am an employee of the Oregon Department of Transportation. I'll be the agency project manager for this project. What that means is this is a TGM grant, joint program between ODOT and DLCD. So it's a grant award. So I review for completeness to the contract and provide input from the ODOT point of view. And Kittleson keeps me happy because I pay them their invoices. And typically you'd see Region 5 here, but they're so slammed with important work that they invited me in from Region 4 to help them out. So that is why you see me and not a Region 5 rep. Let's see how I use it. System is I usually fly by on 84 going somewhere, but I'll be happy to get off the road finally and see your community. I always enjoy looking at new communities. I've been in Oregon forever, but I've never done anything in Boardman, so that'll be really cool. I think you've done a lot of transportation planning work already in the city, so I think a successful plan for me will be seeing how Kittleson integrates all that previous work into a cohesive, readable plan. So that'll be really interesting. I've been going through your memos, and that looks like that'll be an interesting chore for you guys to accomplish. And I was surprised looking again at your memos of demographics that you have such a large Hispanic population. So I'll be interested to see how we can reach out to that community and make sure their issues are addressed in the TSP. So with that, I'll move on to the next person.
Thanks, Evan. I think the last one is Marla Stanton.
And Mike Lees.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Mike. Yeah, Marla first, then Mike.
Hi there, Mahler Stanton. I'm with ODOT Region 5. I'm the region traffic engineer. So I'm just here to kind of represent ODOT's perspective a little bit on the traffic side of the house. Evan can represent more on the planning side. I was actually in Boardman yesterday. I got some lunch. Been there. It's usually how I use Boardman's transportation system on the way through, sometimes gas, sometimes lunch. You know, I think I'd leave it more to local folks on what successful transportation system looks like in Boardman. I thought it was quite, you know, important to recognize that I-84 does cut through the community, and you know, I think that's a big issue with it, with the town growing up on both sides, and what can be done about that. I think a key issue for me in this TSP update is kind of recognizing some of ODOT's funding challenges. And I think in past planning documents, you know, some communities have relied on ODOT for things, or to maybe do things that ODOT's just maybe not going to be able to do in the future. And I don't want to be too pessimistic about that, but I think Boardman, it's exciting that Boardman's taking the bull by the horns and is trying to make things better in their community. I'm trying to help where we can on that.
Great. Thanks, Marla. Mike.
Good afternoon, Mike Lee, city engineer. I typically use Boardman's transportation system every Thursday when I come to town. I live in the Grand and commute to Boardman just to attend meetings and oversee projects within the city. So a successful transportation system plan in Boardman would address current traffic concerns and accommodate, you know, set a plan for future development and future growth within Boardman. Some key issues the TSP should address include the rapid growth of Boardman. And not only does I-84 split the city, but also the BPA transmission line splits the city. And so making a plan for future development that addresses those two barriers, if you could call them that, would be good. And then, yeah, trying to look in your crystal ball and foresee you know, how much is the city going to grow and which direction that growth is going to occur.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I think we just had someone join Dejan. Is that right?
Yes. Sorry, I was a little late. I was stuck in a meeting until just now.
Yeah, no problem. We're just doing a quick introduction. You're the last of our online folks, so give us your name, and then if you can answer the questions that are on the screen there.
Sure thing. Well, I'm Dayon. It's the opposite of night off. I work with the Oregon Department of Transportation and the Transportation Planning Analysis Unit. Looking at some of the questions, I don't spend too much time in Boardman myself. I do pass through quite a bit, east and west, though I have, I do occasionally find myself down at the Boardman Marina, so I have a couple of friends and associates that really like to go out on the river. And when it comes to really the next two is just finding a transportation system sort of plan that is functional for the city of Boardman, sort of makes it so that it thrives in the best way it can, and continues to be a good place for all the people that live and work there, while also being as safe as possible. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dayon, and appreciate the clue on how to pronounce your name. I completely butchered it when I introduced you, so apologize for that.
It happens quite a bit. It's totally
Yeah.
cool.
Good. So I was wrong. We have another online attendee, Patrick Keeley.
I am here. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
So I tie in with Morrow County Public Transit, so I apologize for coming in late. My primary use is in that regard. I'm sending buses over in our vans, trying to navigate the city streets that are there. I do come over into Boardman personally for business, right? I use Murray's Pharmacy as an example. And I have family members that work out at the port. So seeing Boardman come together in a way that makes sense to get in and out of the port in a timely fashion, to get on and off the freeway is obviously important. And then a system in some way that'll tie all of that together for Morrow County Public Transit is a key piece of that. As we try to navigate those buses in a timely fashion and make those loops, that's a key part of that transit system that I'd like to see come together.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else online that we haven't had a chance to hear from yet?
This is Gabe from the Morrow County School District.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Gabe. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I live there in Boardman and drive through Boardman to commute over to Oregon at the district office. And yeah, the Boardman transportation system could always be improved for the safety of the kids and maybe expanded to cover sidewalks in more areas for that reason. So we just want the kids to be safe, I guess, from the standpoint of the school district.
Great. Anything else, Gabe?
No, that's everything.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. Can I ask all the online participants to mute if you aren't already? And then I'll turn it over to Carla McLean because we haven't given her a chance to share her thoughts. Go ahead, Carla.
So Carla McLean, I'm the planning official here for Boardman. I've worked in the Morrow County area now for over 24 years. So I have a pretty good sense of what Boardman's growth has been over that period of time. And I've watched what's happened here. Interestingly, the current Boardman TSP was adopted in 2001, which is about the time I started working for Morrow County. So it's just a smidge out of date. Just a smidge. How do I typically use Boardman's transportation system? I don't live in Boardman, so I use it to get to work and to depart and go home. But I also drive around town and occasionally get gas or heading somewhere to get lunch or go through Heather's drive-through and pick up a matcha blended. You know, so like anybody who comes and goes in town, as part of my job, I try to get out and see other parts of town. I don't do that as much as I would like. It was real evident today when the three of us were driving around and it's like, oh, I haven't been on this street in a while. You know, 3 new homes have been built in Tuscany that I didn't realize had been built. So I don't get out as much as I should, but I would agree, you know, we have a lot of streets. We've deferred maintenance for far too long. Driving around, there are places where we've not been consistent about requiring infill development to put sidewalks in, or the sidewalks weren't regularly required for some reason at some point in the past. I can't speak to why those things happened the way they happened. I can say that now we're working really hard to make sure that sidewalks get put in, whether it's a new development or infill. We've been working with Mike Lees, who is the city engineer, on figuring out, you know, we recently did a pavement evaluation study. We know where the bad pavement is, and now we need to figure out how to program to make improvements. What does a successful transportation system in Boardman look like to you? I think we need more east-west connections, and we need more connections to get us from one side of the freeway to the other. The difficulty in that is the built environment. 20 plus years ago, when both Boardman and Morrill County adopted their first TSPs, we thought we could have an overpass at Olson, not an interchange, but an overpass. But I think what's happened with the built environment and that is that reality is just, it's passed us by because we didn't do the work we should have done 20 years ago to preserve the space to accomplish that. So we've got to figure out other options and other ways to make what we do have function in the best way possible. Maybe there's an opportunity for a bike and ped crossing at a place like Olson. Maybe we can't get cars across, but can we get other modes of transportation across? What key issues? My list is so long, you guys would be here all day. So what I will say is that as we've gone around the table and through the people on the call, I think you've hit the highlights. You know, when we first started talking about doing this, we applied for the TA grant the first 2 years ago, and we were unsuccessful, and we're heavily encouraged to come back and apply again. And we did, and we're successful in getting the grant that's supporting this work. I'm not sure Matt knew what he was getting into when he took the project on with Kittleson, but we have a lot of work to do when it comes to where are we at with our transportation system, and where are we at with how we're going to plan for that system. And again, the list is long. It's about the streets, but it's about the sidewalks. It's about the connection from one neighborhood to the next. It's about safe routes to schools. So yeah, those key issues is a long, illustrious list. So I want to say on behalf of the city of Boardman, thank you to all of you for agreeing to participate with this group. Oftentimes with a transportation project, where there's a public advisory committee and a technical advisory committee. And my experience historically is that for those of us that go to both, we sit through the same thing twice. And so we've combined them this time. It's one public advisory committee, and we're going to hit you with all of it. But hopefully we do it in a way that those of you who don't have the technical background, we can help bring you up to speed. And those of you that do, hopefully you're willing to help teach those of us who don't. And we'll make this a real fun and collaborative process. So thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your hard work. And there will be a lot of it.
Great, thank you. Let's see, for our later arriving virtual attendees, I'll just reintroduce myself. I'm Matt Hugart with Kittleson. Apologize for some of the technical difficulties. We are just simply screen sharing today. We'll have the PowerPoint up. Our video does not work in the room here, so a bit of a technical issue will get resolved at some point down the road. But for today, you just get to listen to us. I'll just give you what do I want to accomplish with this TSP spiel. I'm here to be a technical resource, Isa and I, and there's two other consultant team members that are not here today, but be an integral part of the team. So we have Zan Associates, who will be helping with public engagement, and then MIG, who's going to be helping with the code and policy work that goes along with the TSP. So they'll be part of future meetings as we go along, but for today, it's just Isa and myself. But from speaking on behalf of Isa and myself, I guess what do we want to accomplish? Well, we're here to be a kind of a technical resource. Certainly we have our opinions, and we'll try and gently guide certain things in certain directions, but this is, your TSP. We want it to look like your TSP. So I think that's one of the things we definitely want to try and accomplish is at the end of the day, this needs to be the community's TSP. And if, you guys want certain things, that's how we're going to try and structure it. So I think that's just from my perspective, what the importance of our role here is a technical role and a guiding role, but we're not here to tell you how to create your TSP. So. Okay, Mike, can you advance the slide, please? Okay, keep going. All right, so what is a TSP? Well, Carla, sorry, go ahead, Mike, just to the next page. There you go. So the current Boardman TSP, if you've never been a part of a TSP, Transportation System Plan is the acronym. It's a long-range planning document. It's a master plan for your transportation system. It covers the urban area, so up to and including all of your urban growth boundary. It does not extend outside of the urban growth boundary, but we can sort of project where we might have some UGB expansions. We can kind of point arrows in that direction, but we can't technically plan for anything outside the urban growth boundary. And it covers all modes of transportation. So by Oregon revised statute, it covers not just your roadways and your sidewalks and your transit system, but it covers your marine system, navigation, if you got it, airports, transmission lines, gas, electricity, things like that. So it covers the broad spectrum of transportation, but for the most part, it's the people moving and goods moving aspect that we'll focus on. As you haven't seen by now on the slide, it's a coordinated effort, which is why we've got representatives from ODOT and the county and CTUIR and others. While it's the city's TSP, we're required, and the city's required to make sure that it's not a TSP that's, sits on an island. But it definitely is coordinated with the plans and the needs and the interests of others. You got roads in the city that are not owned by the city. Got Port Moro, you got county, you got ODOT. So all that stuff has to be taken into account and coordinated with. So we make sure we recognize that fact and work closely with you all as representatives of your various jurisdictions and entities to help keep us on track. I think that's one of the key rules and why you were asked to be a part of this committee. As Carla pointed out, your current TSP was adopted in 2001. So yeah, it's on the oldest side of old. I think, most TSPs are developed and then continuously updated and adopted. Now the city has done some of that through the adoption of some sub-area planning efforts. We've got interchange area management plans for both interchanges, and there's been any number of corridor plans and sub-area plans for your downtown and Main Street areas. So there's been a lot of planning work. It's not been devoid of planning efforts, but there's been a lot, and just none of those have ever been corralled back into one sort of master planning document. So that'll be one of the tasks that we'll take on, is trying to take those projects that were identified in these various historical plans and more recently adopted plans and bringing them into the fold, reanalyzing, reassessing whether they need to remain, and then looking forward for another 20 years to see what else needs to be accomplished and added to that. So, any questions on that? How many people, just by show of hands in the room, anybody not know what's in a TSP or ever been a part of a TSP planning effort? Okay, so yeah, no hands here. So assuming most people know, generally speaking, what goes into them and how much time and effort it takes to update them. So, Mike, next slide. So I think as we went around the room in the virtual room, I think a lot of people were recognizing why we're here today. It didn't almost need to be said, but we've had a lot of population growth. I think the official population count for the city is something like 4,200 people, but I think if you were to update that, it's probably closer to 5. We all had to guess. Probably in the span of 5 years, we've gone up by 1,500 people or more.
Close to.
Yeah, so that's a huge increase when you start, at 3,500 people. And I think whoever said it, it's not too much of a stretch to suggest that we might be doubling that, at some point in the near future, or at least within the time span of a new TSP. So taking that into account is kind of key. Port Moro has been a huge, I think, driver to a lot of that growth, and continues to be the economic engine for not only the city, but for the region. So recognizing that and making sure that its needs from a freight movement perspective are kind of accomplished. And at the same time, you got a lot of employment that you generate. So that employment is a bit atypical, not for an industrial complex, but it's not 8 to 5. It's 4 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and then you got a graveyard shift, and then you got a night shift. And so it's pretty much a constant influx and outflux of employment, that's not just coming from Boardman, coming from regions, population centers all over the area. So all that being said, it's kind of important to make sure that this TSP is reflective of all that. And then, I think, one of the struggles that a lot of communities who are doing their TSP updates at the moment, state of Oregon has, within the last 2 years, released a number of requirements, brand new requirements regarding transportation planning. Now, a lot of those requirements and the stricter ones apply to the Portland and Salem metro areas, where they've been given a lot more checkboxes when it comes to doing planning. But statewide, I think the state and communities like Boardman are now being asked to go a little bit more than they ever have when it comes to bringing the word equity into transportation. So making sure that that transportation network is meeting the needs and interests of all people who live here. And historically speaking, I think, those underrepresented populations are the groups that tend to get overlooked the most. So I'm not saying that we have to do anything different than we have in the past in terms of outreach, but we have to be more specific about how we are trying to reach out to those groups and giving them a voice and an ear towards, ensuring that their needs and interests are also being met. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges. And as I mentioned before, Zan Associates, who's a public engagement and planning specialist, they're going to be working with us and with Carla and her staff to make sure that, when we have public meetings, they're not just public meetings in City Hall, but we get creative with those meetings, and we have them at locations in the community that some of these underrepresented groups are maybe more comfortable attending, things like that. So a lot of different strategies and ways we'll go about getting public feedback. We'll try and bring that into the fold. So. So I'll just keep talking until someone asks a question and keep going. So Mike, next slide. Yep, keep going. Okay, so project schedule. We are here to talk today about the first 3 tech memos. These are kind of groundbreaking, or not groundbreaking, but they're ground truthing memos. We'll go through each of them in a very high level. Probably won't have time to drill down into the nuances, but I hope you at least had a chance to thumb through them. Where do we go from there? So the minute we walk out of here, Isa and I will be busy working on our existing and future conditions analyses. We're going to hope to have that completed here in the mid-November time period. But that might be more like late November at this point. But that's just going to be a lot of what's out there, a lot of mapping, a lot of inventory. We've already started on some operations analysis. We already got traffic counts that have been collected. We've been reviewing those and analyzing those. That will then feed into the Tech Memo 5, which is the future conditions. So we'll be ready to share that, just after the start of the new year. And that will be that forward facing, all right, if we do get a doubling of our population and it all occurs in certain geographic areas, what does that mean? From an operation standpoint, from a needs standpoint, that'll be part of that future conditions. So not getting too deep down into the schedule, all of that will be re-shared with you all at a future PAC meeting and a public event meeting sometime in that mid-January time period, date to be determined. So be on the lookout for more announcements on that. That's currently where we go. Now, this ultimately is a project that has a time frame, there's a clock's ticking in the background. So because it's a grant project, our contract runs out basically the end of 2025. So we are marching towards completion, complete completion and adoption of this TSP by no later than December of 2025. So a little over a year from now, but that's not, it may seem like a long time, but it'll be here before we know it. But because of our schedule assumes that we've got at least a couple months worth of hearings and adoptions and 35-day notice processes at the LCD, a lot of this TSP is going to be wrapped up probably in the late summer 2025. So that's why we're kind of on an accelerated schedule at the moment. Any questions on the schedule?
I'll just say that we drove around for a couple hours this morning. I've never seen two people roll down their windows and take pictures as much as these two did. So they have all kinds of picture evidence of what's out there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we're on the subject of pictures. If you're out and about and you see a picture that you'd like to share with us, please don't hesitate to take one. Pictures of good things, pictures of bad things, pictures of things you'd like us to take another look at. Don't hesitate to take photos. And if it's a great photo and there aren't maybe some faces in the crowd that we need to avoid, but we potentially use those as part of the TSP document. We'll give you credit. So. These are just inventory photos mostly, but you know, we took a lot of photos of the different sidewalk treatments. Unfortunately, it was at 10:30, 11 o'clock this morning. There's nobody out. So a nice sunny day with, you know, some people walking and biking would be great. Love to have those. But yeah, I
we
think
did capture two people walking over the Newport Bridge. And then we caught somebody walking just out in front of City Hall on Main. So.
Are you
Yeah.
guys gonna be out when there's schools, when school gets out and when school starts? Are you guys gonna be out about and seeing that visually yourselves?
I was gonna suggest at 3:30 today,
Yeah,
Sam Boardman Elementary, you really should go take a look.
just go sit right over here.
Even
at
though
the
it has
fire
a brand new
station.
sidewalk. It is.
Okay.
I got my granddaughter.
It's just it's just one of our restricted areas.
we might see if we can get out here a little early and run down there and take a look. Yeah,
Just
I'm-
at Neal's fire department parking lot, and you'll watch the chaos.
Well, I am quite familiar with what goes on up at the high school, on Boardman, so do have a little bit of history and experience there, but okay. Next slide, Mike. Okay, yeah, I think Carla kind of hit upon this. I'll just gloss over it real quick, but the role here today is, you know, advisory, and to ground truth us and keep us on track. So what does that mean? And for the most part is reviewing these memos in advance of their meetings, come prepared with questions. Don't feel free to ask questions. If we got something right or wrong, definitely need to hear about it, want to hear about it. So you're our kind of eyes and ears. You're also at some level a representative of the larger community. So you know, kind of think of yourself as a representative of the community. So if you know, want to bring in your own perspectives, but also the perspectives of the people that you know and live next to and others, we'd certainly love to hear about it. So we hope you will have the time to attend these PAC meetings. We'll try and give you a couple weeks notice, in most cases, when they will be. If this time slot works for everybody, we'll try and maintain some early afternoon time slot, but if the consensus needs these to be in the morning, we can certainly adjust. At the moment, this is how we'll proceed. And if you can't attend in person, we'll always be set up to be virtual for those that need that flexibility.
I would add to that we had, I think we're up to 3 people now, that are out of town and couldn't be here today. That's why we're recording it. We have created a page on the city's website. I'll try to make sure in some future email that I'll let you know how to get to that, where the documents will be posted. And we're also going to post the recording of the meeting. So these will be memorialized, probably not forever on that page, but certainly for the next several years as we work through this process. So if you miss a meeting or you're like, what, how did he talk about that? You can go back and actually hear it again.
And maybe we'll be able to see it.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to, yeah.
We'll
We'll
always
figure
have
out
the
these
virtual piece set up, but maybe actually working.
Yeah, we'll actually see ourselves. Yes.
Next slide, Mike. Okay, so there were 3 memos that were produced and shared with you all. Assuming you've had a chance to at least thumb through them, I'm not going to go into deep detail on any of them. However, we'll spend a little bit more time on others. So the first memo is a plans and policy review memo. Our colleagues over at MIG were the primary authors here. This is just one of those checkbox memos. It's definitely a memo that we need as a consultant team to do because it gives us a better understanding of what's currently out there from an adopted planning standpoint. So they went through and did a pretty in-depth review of the current TSP. They went through and looked at all the other related planning documents, comprehensive plan, development code, the county, various county planning documents, those previously aforementioned IAMPs, and all the other documents that typically go into sort of getting a basic understanding of what we have to work with, reside in this plans and policies memo. So it kind of tells the story of who is living, working, and doing business in the community, documents what growth and changes are protected in the future. So I think that's basically what, you know, we're doing with these plans and policy. If you have any like real detailed questions, please speak up, but I'm gonna gloss over that one and just trust that everyone had a chance to take a peek at it. Any detailed questions, we can either take them offline or at the end of the meeting.
I would add too, in the future, if any of you want us to make copies of any of these for you, let us know. We can certainly do that as well. So we've sent them to you electronically, but if for some reason you need them printed or some other form, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate that.
Okay, yeah, next slide, Mike. Oh, you know
I
what?
think the titles got changed. This would be talking about the community profile and trends.
Yeah, okay.
And now.
All right, so all right, we'll back up. Back up 2 slides, Mike. Okay, so pretend like that's instead of saying plans and policy review, that should say community profile. Okay, so the community profile is probably one that if you did take a look at it's definitely one that I think we could spend a few minutes on here this afternoon. So one of the things that was in our scope was a little bit of a deep dive into who is Boardman, who lives here, who works here. What are those commuting profiles and how do they influence how people commute to and from Boardman? So there's a lot of detail that went into that. If you have any questions, we can go into these a little bit more detail here. But there's a lot of interesting facts we uncovered in Boardman, none the least of which was maybe a disagreement between what the official population figures are for the city and what the city believes to be those numbers. So unfortunately, we report on the published facts at the moment. So Portland State University demographics, they keep the official records. So I'm not surprising that there probably is more people living here right this moment than the official records indicate. But I think when you look at those numbers, yeah, they might be higher, but they're also pretty diverse. Maybe that's not a surprise, but there's a lot of diversity in town right now. We certainly know there's a lot of migrant farming community members that I'm not sure how long they stay on a typical basis, but they kind of rotate in and out. I think we know that. But they're still, I think, an important part of the economy and the local population group. So that was part of the research, a little bit of a demographics profile. We also looked at the business profile in the city. So there's quite a diversity of interests and business interests. We all know about the data centers and kind of how they're changing the landscape. Port of Morrow continues to be, as I mentioned before, a huge source of future employment or existing employment and likely future employment, I would imagine. I don't care to share about some of the forecasting work you guys are doing, Jacob, but how does it look going forward out there?
I could have given you a lot more information 2 or 3 years ago. Unfortunately, the last 2 or 3 years, we've been working with some issues around some utility services. So I guess in the future, we're just focused on diversity. We obviously get a multitude of requests for different types of businesses on a daily basis, kind of in a holding pattern until some of these facilities, transportation, utility facilities are up to date and ready for the next wave of expansion and more business. But I don't know what else you're looking for to expand on, but specifically it's across the board. I mean, we get business inquiries, like I said, daily. A lot of it's long-term, permanent business, inquiries. We get daily requests for transportation of very specific cargoes coming in and out of the port area. There's a big push for using the river, a lot more with the transportation issues that we see coming from the west and kind of the bottleneck down in Houston, coming into the central United States. But we get a lot of requests for transformers, energy projects, a lot of kind of one-off stuff where they want to bring stuff up the river and offload here. And you know, one big piece of this thing is we should probably talk a little bit about high, wide, and heavy corridor. We've been a member of that for a few years, and how that aligns with this TSP. We've been identified as the location, you know, so a lot of these bulk products coming up the river and going into central Canada, central United States, a lot of shippers and logistic companies want to get off here, and they want to get in on the freeway system and want to head east and north, just based upon other critical issues with other ports on the ocean side and coming through Houston. Predominantly, most big stuff has came from Houston over the years. But with the complications and from Houston to coming up north, they want to shift that to here.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
I
it's
figured
fine.
you had something to say about it, so. Yeah. Okay, and then I think, you know, the other part of the sort of the business community is, you know, being on I-84. I think, you know, there's this pretty significant amount of your economy is freeway oriented. So a lot of freeway oriented retail and hotel and motel establishments. Carla pointed out a couple of new ones that cities dealing with at the moment. So I think there's going to be a continued focus on serving the traveling public. Mr. Hattenauer's businesses being prime example of that here today. And then I think this is a piece of it that we chatted about or talked about in the last part of the memo is what does that mean from a sort of a commuting and circulation standpoint? So there's kind of, I'll let you, if you haven't seen them already, kind of look at it, but you know, I think the inflow and outflow of people coming to and from Boardman changes, like breathing in and breathing out. And in the morning, you have a large influx, and that influx then kind of dissipates throughout the day, and then it kind of comes back in the late afternoon when you get the next second shift and the night shift. So that you can see that in the volume counts that we've collected and the other information that we've identified. And as we pointed out, you know, Boardman being 4,000 people, it can't and hasn't ever been able to be the sole source of a lot of the employment and jobs that occur out there. So a lot of that employment comes from places to the east, Hermiston and Pendleton and the Tri-Cities. And that commute contributes to the traffic congestion that I think you see on Main Street and some of these other interchanges. Yeah. So I see that up there. Patrick Keeley, go ahead.
So I just returned back from a training in which, and maybe Dehan, you can speak to this or putting you on the spot a little bit here. Sounded like Oregon, as part of their funding crisis, is looking at moving towards pushing a lot more rail as it's easier to maintain and they can kind of deflect some of those road issues. How is that going to work into the Port of Boardman, right? So if we change that model and start moving more stuff in and out of the region by rail, I imagine Boardman is going to pick up a piece of that as a port that they can load and unload rail. Is that something that we need to look at as a piece of this per ODOT's expanded future policy? Dehan, I'm not sure what your role was on ODOT. I came in a little bit late. Am I off base here?
Well, I would say rail is going to hold a important piece moving forward. We do see a lot of rail activity. We've obviously put a bunch of investment into our rail facilities over the last 10 years. I can think offhand of 4 huge rail projects. We've taken federal funding. We just completed a federal build grant. The final of that project is actually this week. So we continue to build onto our rail system. We do see a likelihood that the rail system going through the gorge is bottlenecked. And you get down to the Port of Portland, Port of Vancouver, Port of Tacoma, there's issues with longshoreman activities and the bottleneck of rail going in and out of the gorge. So we've seen kind of an uptick in business of bringing long haul trans United States rail services that want to stop here and switch to either barge or truck and continue on to the valley. I would say that that's probably going to increase. I can't tell you, what percentage wise. We have seen a major increase in our corn and grain products on that front. So it's only gonna increase. I just don't know to what extent. I think we've done a really good job of forecasting rail expansion. So I would say our rail facilities are built out for a 10-year horizon or more. So I think for the TSP is just to kind of, work around that, understand if those facilities are existing. They're ready to be used, the $26 million, $25 million bill grant just got completed. It's going to get more rail use over the near future. So being able to tie that into intermodal type to trucks, I think that is important to build to the existing infrastructure that we've got.
Right, so I believe I'm understanding what you're saying there, and I'm not sure who was speaking, but I understand you guys just did a big build for the rail portion. Are we prepared on the road portion to bring those trucks in and out on an expanded scale as we become the end of that piece of it or the beginning of the next piece of it, right? Do we expect in that 10-year expansion the increased truck traffic coming in and out of the port? And are we preparing for that in this current plan that we're building out?
I think that's a good question for Matt to answer for us.
By the way, Patrick, that was Jacob Kane from Port of Morrow just speaking here. So yeah, this is Matt Hugard again. Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned before, there's a couple previously adopted planning projects that have gone on since the first TSP was, or since the 2001 TSP adopted. Those are the interchange area management plans for both Main Street and Laurel Lane. I can't recall the specifics about the Main Street, but definitely for Laurel Lane, there was a big focus and recognition that, some of that backup that you're seeing at 5 a.m, backing on the freeway is a function of the growth in the Port of Morrow and that interchange's inability to accommodate a lot of trips in a pretty short amount of time. And that's not too uncommon when you have facilities that operate on a shift basis like that. So so there was a strong focus in that IAMP, the Laurel Lane IAMP, to come up with some ideas for how to make that interchange function better, both from a circulation standpoint, that flex shift changing standpoint, and from the accommodation of trucks and increased freight over time. And so there is some project work that was in that IAMP that we'll incorporate into this TSP update, and where need be, expand on it and potentially improve it or add to it. So Devin, go ahead.
Yeah, me being the new guy, unfamiliar with the area there. Is there rail siding at the port? Is there an offload ability there for the rail?
Several.
Yeah, so we have 3 active rail sidings, 2 existing that have been in service for 15 years. The other been here since the first Logan plant was built. So it's been here 40 years, 50 years. And then the 3rd siding just being put into service. I think we just got the Union Pacific sign-off letter last week. So
yeah, so mega asset for the community. So yeah, we're getting reinforced several different ways. We need to address that in this process.
Quick question, with the Port Memorial internal facilities, do you guys have a separate TSP or is that a component of the Boardman TSP?
So we've been vetting that with Carla for quite some time. In fact, years ago, I think we talked about how we we're gonna address that. And it's shame on us for not addressing it sooner, just everything else going on, so busy, but we have been operating under the framework of the Boardman TSP.
Some county, some Boardman.
Yeah, and we have worked with our land use consultant. We worked with Carla, our attorney Sarah, working on what that framework would look like in a TSP, and this gives us a great opportunity to make that implementation. Now we've worked on setting standards, different stuff for port-owned facilities, and we're looking forward to implementing that for the first time. So,
Right.
I think part of the problem is about only a third of the entire land that makes up the main part of the Port of Morrow is actually even in the city's UGB. So as I mentioned before, this by state statute, we can't plan outside of the UGB. So it's only so much the Boardman TSP can do for the balance of the rest of the Port of Morrow. So that's going to be a challenge in terms of how we can make those two.
But I think a couple of things that we want to make sure we memorialize in this TSP though is the Port of Morrow's road standard, because back in 1819, I don't remember the date exactly, we did go through a process, the county, the city, and the port at the time, and we delineated port facilities, port-owned, managed, maintained facilities. And we made a determination about where the city street ended and where the port road started. And on the other side, where the port road ended and where the county road started. And I think for at least in the city part of that, we want to memorialize where those breaks are and where, where is there within the city limits and equally within the UGB, where is the city street, where is the county road, where is the port road? And make sure we have those delineations and then make sure that the appropriate standard is in our public works standards, because we want our standards to land in our public works standards document, not necessarily in the TSP. If I've learned one thing in 20+ years of planning out here, jurisdictions adopt a TSP and then they adopt another document and then they adopt another document. And pretty soon somebody comes in and says, well, what's my road standard? And you start opening up all these documents and you've got different standards in all of them. And we want to get to where we have one set of standards in one place. And so, of course, we're going to ask the county when they do rebuilds to build when it's in the UGB or inside the city limit. If it's a county road, we're going to ask them to start building those to city standards. But we want to have the port standard in there as well, so that when the port is building something or somebody asks a question about the land use relative to what they're doing, what is the road standard? Well, here it is. It's the port road standard and it's in our standards book too. So that they're consistent.
I guess it's feedback. The standards being located somewhere outside the TSP, because as things change over the next 10 years.
It's easier. It's easier to change the standard in the standards book than it is in the TSP. Absolutely. And standards should be flexible because we're going to learn things on that front that we need to be more flexible, where the TSP should withstand some amount of time. We shouldn't have to change the text in 3 years, but we might need to change the standard in 3 years.
Well, we don't even recommend you put design standards in the TSP for that very reason.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. All right. Well, I think as related to the community profile, I'll stop there. There's a lot of interesting facts and information in there. So if you haven't read it, take a closer look at it. And if you have any questions, let us know. Okay, Mike, can you move us to a couple slides up to Tech Memo 3? Okay, Tech Memo 3, Mike, do you happen to have that memo queued up? And can you also maybe share that one here? Not yet, but if you can maybe queue it up on the side, I might ask you to screen share that one as well. I do want to spend the last 45 minutes of our time here, less than 45 minutes, going over this memo, because I think it's pretty important launching point into this TSP. So what we have done, and this is when I say we, it's either myself and a little bit of input from Carla. We created what we're calling just a draft set of goals and objectives and evaluation criteria. These goals and objectives are going to kind of set the tone for how we identify improvement projects for the city. They're very high level, you can imagine, but we can make them more specific as need be. But this was our attempt to at least go through the OAR requirements for transportation planning in the state and make sure that you've got at least a core group of six goals. Those core group focus on the concept of safety. No, we can need to go into that one. Safety at all modes, all levels. Mobility. So mobility is ability to get people and goods through the community. Accessibility and connectivity is, really, can it serve all people that need to be served, and how connected is it? Right? If you can only get from the high school to the south part of town via one corridor, which is really what you got right now, is that the most connected you can make your system? Maybe not, maybe not. So the concept of connectivity is important. And I were thinking of, as we were traveling around today, we went through some of these newer subdivisions, and it's pretty amazing. There's only one way in and one way out of some brand new subdivisions. And while that might change in the long-term future, I don't think we missed the opportunity to make those subdivisions a little more connected. So we need to guard against things like that. We mentioned the concept of community and equity. So are we reaching out and really capturing the needs and interests of all people in town, or not just the local minority? So that's what that one's about. Sustainability, I think doesn't need to be said, is, when we build roads, do we need 35, 40-foot local streets? Got a lot of that in town. And that's expensive to build, it's expensive to maintain. It's, probably wider and bigger and badder than you really need, for the amount of trips and traffic that you have here. So thinking along the lines of maybe dialing that back a bit, looking at our standards and figuring out a way to make it easier to maintain and build these roads. Then that kind of goes into the strategic investment piece, is what are we doing to make sure that when we're identifying projects, have we prioritized them correctly? And can we fund them? Can we pay for them? How are we going to fund them, and how are we going to pay for them? And then how does that then influence the prioritization of our projects? So those were the first 6 starting goals. So for those of you in the room, and Mike, this is where I might ask you to pull up the goals and policy memo. We've got printouts of the various goals and objectives that were written, again, by us without any input, as starting points. And we're really just kind of interested in kind of what you think. If you read them and did you disagree? Is there anything missing? Or is there another goal that we should be thinking about and adding in here? So Mike, if you're looking at, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. If you can go to the page, see a couple of pages down, one more. Yep, right there. So again, I kind of highlighted these in high level overview, but what do you think? Any questions around the virtual room or the physical room here? Is there anything missing? Is there anything that we really hit on that struck a chord, positive or negative?
Maybe spend so what's the evaluation criteria set up for? So what are we gonna be using this score sheet to evaluate specifically? Are these specific projects that we're talking about, or TSP in general? Can maybe explain them?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks, Jacob. So highest high level picture on these goals and objectives are this is basically how we're going to influence the decision making going forward. So if we're identifying improvement projects such as a new road from point A to point B, we're going to score that project according to these goals. So how well is it scoring against the concept of safety? How well is it scoring against the concept of mobility, accessibility, equity, sustainability, and strategic investment? So along with these goals and objectives, we've created this evaluation matrix. And Mike, if you want to advance 2 more pages down, one more. Yep, right there. So this is where we've created a draft framework for how to score these projects. So again, at the end of that particular stage of the project, we might have 100 different ideas, 100 different projects, some ranging from roadway projects to sidewalk projects to transit projects to high, wide, and heavy projects. We're going to look at each of those projects and we're going to evaluate them according to these goals and objective frameworks. And when we go through that evaluation process, depending upon the score that we give it, that will give it at least some level of prioritization. So if we've got, I don't know, 5 roadway projects that we're evaluating and they're all various forms of connectivity, we might have different scores that we would assign it because one might be more connecting than the other, right? Or one might only be connecting one land use to another land use. So is that a strategic investment on the city's part, or is it more opportunistic that could be handled by future development? So the evaluation matrix is a way to advance this goals and objectives list and turn it into an evaluation and prioritization framework so that we can weed out, if you will, those projects that are not meeting at the highest levels all of the goals and objectives that we set forth for ourselves. So that's why I guess we introduced this goals and objectives discussion at the beginning of the process. So if there is a strategic goal that's missing from this list, this would be the time to add it in. So that's kind of why, going back to the original question, what's missing, or what is hitting, the chords correctly when it comes to your own perspectives on the city's transportation system. And I know that's kind of a broad question, but is there anything that just jumps off the page, good or bad? Silence says the wheels are turning and people are reading. So.
The entities invited that's not here, West Extension Irrigation,
They're not actually in the city.
but they don't go through the city at all.
No, West Extension, unlike, right. Now, as we grow, they will be, but at this point in time, they are not. So we've got, if we start talking about UGB expansion to the west, then we have a West Extension issue. But at this point in time, there are not any, that's bad grammar, wasn't it?
I understood what y'all meant.
I felt like I went to the south for a sec there. Anyway, unlike the city of Irrigan, where West Extension is on every corner, and often throughout the county in this area, I mean, every time you do a plat, you've got to figure out where the West Extension components are. That is not the case inside Boardman. I don't know why. I don't know what the history is for that, but they're just not here.
That's good.
Yes. Only if we push the UGB to the west, and I don't know that that's going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years. Yeah, I mean, clearly at the point in time that we do a UGB expansion and we do that work, they'll be at that table. But for this effort today, it's
West Extension. So
Well,
Independent.
complex.
Chairman.
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if we were just going to talk about other entities that not directly transportation related, but folks that utilize right away. Well, actually, there's probably 2 entities. Windwave, because of the data packs that they have and how it affects what's underground, and then UEC. But not so much their service delivery line, because those go underground. So, power to the house, power to the business. But the 230s that they're deploying to serve the data centers, those are above ground. And at this point in time, they're not here. But they also have their own processes. So.
In some of these areas.
As far as their role on the committee, or are they part of
Yeah,
the committee?
part of
Yeah.
it.
That falls back in the safety, like. Maybe a spot to.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't add anybody in particular, but we can certainly invite them to some future meetings.
Very. Done a good job, right? So back to the other side.
Yeah.
And the primary. And
Yeah, we work closely with the fire department and obviously the police department. And historically, we worked with, the health district as the EMS provider, and of course that's shifting now to the Boardman Fire, but.
So on here it says to, under the mobility, the advancement of stop amenity, etc. And it made me think of the loop, and it currently, they have a route that they run, but there's no signage, there's no benches, there's no safe places for people to go. Nobody knows what time they're stopping at each one, so in the least amount, we should put a T-post with a sign on that says bus stop and the bus stops at this time, and maybe advertise
Right.
that it's free, because the word's not getting.
So we've been working with Patrick. He's on the, yeah, and
I am
we've been
here.
working.
I was sorry to interrupt you, Carla. I could barely hear who was talking there. They were very faint, so I was trying to hear that conversation. I'll let you go ahead, but I am listening and taking some notes over here.
Yeah, so that was Heather Baumgartner, one of our city councilor that's a representative here on the PAC. And I was just sharing with her that that's a project we're working on. So you'll remember, yeah, several months ago, this council adopted those 3 documents to kind of inform the TSP from a transit perspective. We've been talking about bus stops. The difficulty is we don't have a standard for what a bus stop should look like. So one of the outcomes of this process is we need to define what a bus stop looks like. What makes up
I think she and I can tell you what a bus stop looks like, because I live in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what I think it looks like too. It should, here it should have some side of kind of shelter from windy days like today. It should have a bench. There probably should be a garbage can there.
At the very least, a sign.
And at the very least, a sign. At the very first thing it needs to have is a sign. But then it's like, well, okay, if you put those amenities in, who's responsible for them and who takes care of them? So there are a number of things that we need to work through, both from on the city side, but also from the county side about how we implement all of that.
My concern, can you hear me, Patrick?
I can, go ahead.
Okay, so my concern is that their grant funding is going to run out. And at this time, we are not advertising appropriately. And at the very least, we need to get those signs up that says, this is a bus stop and this bus stops at this time every day and it's free, because nobody knows. I watch those buses drive around and they're empty. And that is not a good use of those grant dollars. And so at the very least, get the signs up, and you guys can hash out who's gonna take care of them after you get them put up. But right now, we have to make this program successful.
Yeah.
No, those are all great comments. Well, let me do this. We got a little less than half an hour. I don't necessarily want to take up every minute of that, but I at least want to advance one piece of this goals and objectives. First thing I want to say is I'm not leaving this in your hands, and you guys are the be all end all of making sure that all of our goals and objectives are covered. You're just one piece of the feedback loop. There'll be more opportunity for these goals and objectives to be shared more broadly with the public. As I mentioned, we got an open house coming up in January. That'll be a part of it. And we can add and subtract to this as necessary. I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of what we've done so far. But I fully admit this is the voice of 3 people primarily, and it needs to be the voice of the larger community. So in my experience, these goals and objectives tend to get wordsmithed quite a bit. If somebody doesn't like the word, explore. And so it gets changed to pursue, and things like that. There's a lot of wordsmithing that goes on. But I think the fundamental piece is if you read into the objectives, and this might be the homework I would leave with you all, is maybe you fundamentally agree with the 6 overall goals, but when you drill down, what do we mean by safety? So as an example, I think we can all think of safety in different ways, right? Can I safely walk from point A to point B? Some people think of safety as, hey, there's a history of crashes occurring at that intersection, and so that intersection is bad. And some people might think of safety along the lines of, I feel unsafe walking from point A to point B because that road's not well lit at night, right? So that's where I kind of look to you all to help me with the idea and the notion of what is safety. So we started with some very basics that are rooted in the OARs and what they require. So at the highest level, I think safety from a physical standpoint is we know we can't eliminate crashes, all crashes on the system, right? Crashes are going to occur for a lot of reasons. The first thing we want to make sure is it's not a geographic deficiency, right? Or not geographic, but a geometric deficiency, right? If the roadway is designed poorly and that's causing crashes, that's on the city. People are drunk driving, we can't stop that. That's going to happen, but we at least want to try and mitigate and minimize what we call the highest levels of injury, which are the fatal and the serious injury crashes. So if there's things that we can do to minimize those going forward, that is a public, serving the public interest at the very basic level. So we started with objectives that think along those lines, but if that wording needs to be adjusted to, we need to make sure there's better lighting in town. That's a safety component in my mind. Then let's make sure there's an objective that speaks to that more clearly. That's where I think we're looking for feedback from you all. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the next 25 minutes, but if you read through this, and you see the choices of wording can be refined and revised to more specifically identify your areas of concern. Please make sure that gets passed on.
Yeah, and you all have my email address because you got something from me. So, send me an email. I'll forward it on to Matt and Isa, and we'll figure out how to work it in. If we get some complimentary comments, that'd be great. If we get some contradictory comments, we'll try to work through that and throw something back at y'all.
And whatever we get, we'll continue to refine and revise and make these updated versions available on the website. Okay.
I got one comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Strategic investment. In the criteria, it seems like there's, and I understand being strategic about what dollars, what grants go out for available funding. But there's some prioritization that should be given to, I guess, creative funding. So you have a project allocated in your, TSP that's a low cost. But all of a sudden it gets blended with another investment for another project. And obviously for a minimal amount of money, obviously you can take a low priority project and get it put into service because of, like the roundabout at the interchange area management plan for the port interchange. Obviously we've been looking for funding on that for going on 3 years now. When that gets funded, all of a sudden Laurel Lane makes sense to put some investment in Laurel Lane for, the best bang for your buck. You're spending 20 cents today versus $1 tomorrow. So how do you define that in some language of, not just strategic investment, but also,
Question, I don't have an answer for you. It's a tough one.
Yeah, how do you connect projects that, we got funding for the big one. There's 3 little ones that are in the neighborhood. Is there a way we can find $1 million locally to add them?
And I've read somewhere, so I want to say one of the projects, there was some language in that strategic investment category, just allowed for the caveat of, unless, a strategic partnership arises and all of a sudden your low priority project becomes high priority because you can do it today for cents on the dollar.
I think it was.
I think that's fine.
Was it the port one or was it the? Could have been the original AMP.
Go back and look at that one. Yeah, no, good question. I think if you look at objective 6B, it kind of speaks to that, maybe not as specific as it is, but pursue grants and collaborate with partnering agencies, to efficiently fund transportation improvements and supporting programs. Maybe it needs to say and look for splinter grants or something that could be added, when it makes sense. It's always easier to construct things at one time than it is to piecemeal it together over time. So,
Right.
good comments. Anybody online have any thoughts before we kind of wrap up for the day? Okay, hearing none. Jacob, not Jacob, Mike, if you could put it back to the PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay, yep. I don't know if you can maximize that. Yeah, thank you. So thank you for your time here today. Feedback on these memos. I said November 8th on here. If you want to take a few extra days, go for it. Whether we had finalized this on the 9th or the 29th, this is all just foundational materials, so it's not going to change what we do going forward if it comes in a few extra days. But I put a deadline on there for the sake of having a deadline. But if you have any physical changes or edits or comments you'd like to see incorporated, you can send those back to Carla. They could be as simple as just here's an email. I didn't like the wording on page 3. Can we switch it to whatever? Or here's a marked up version of all of my thoughts and comments. More the merrier. We appreciate any feedback you can give us. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be working to draft the existing and future conditions inventory memos. Those will come out in tech memos 4 and 5. We'll be ready to share at least part of those before the end of the calendar year. We'll have those in advance of future PAC meeting sometime in call it mid-January at this point. And Alex, yeah, question.
Yeah, real quick. A truck route, I believe there's an established truck route. And if I suppose that's going to be scrutinized a little bit with growth and could you share that? I guess if it's going to come up later, if it's not, I guess I don't know the boundaries of it or exactly what the route is, but it might be nice to share that with the group and then also discuss how that might change as this TSP gets put together. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense.
Alex, are you referring to when Jacob was talking earlier about the high, wide, and heavy corridor? Can you expand on your question?
Well, if it's specific to that, then I guess it's not. I mean, I thought there was a truck route that says, hey, you guys got to use these roads only. But if it's just for wide and high, then maybe it's not as specific as I thought it was. So
there's signs on county roads that refer to truck routes, and they're not very organized. I think they started, Alex, when trucks on the freeway were avoiding jump scales at the rest area, and the road boss at the time, Burke O'Brien, put up signs that said no trucks, for instance, on Coonsey. And I think that was really the main purpose of that. And they're on Laurel, just south or right in the middle of the loop roads. I think it says trucks only to the left, which implicates that no trucks can head south of that spot. I know what you're referring to. Those things need cleaned up. That's on the county, not the city. I don't think there's any in the city that restricts truck traffic, is there?
I don't think we have any. I mean, I've been trying to go back and find old ordinances and resolutions where the city has established truck limits or truck parking and those types of things to kind of just inform myself. I do know that we do not allow, if you're a long haul trucker and that's what you do for a living, inside the city of Boardman, you cannot take your truck to your home and park it. We don't allow trucks on city streets. So now certainly commercial delivery vehicles in the corridor, absolutely. I mean, Dollar General and Family Dollar and the grocery store need to get their deliveries. But beyond that, we kind of, that's part of the reason you see some of the truck parking that you do around the freeway interchange. Some of that is local people who have found a place to park their truck, leave a car in the vicinity, get home, or somebody picks them up. So yeah, we do have we do limit, trucks. So, you know, if you're moving and the moving van comes down your street, that's okay. But, if you own that moving van, you can't park in front of your house.
Do you have a limitation on how long those trucks can park in some of those areas? 'Cause a couple trucks that haven't left parking lot from the truck shop in a week.
So that's one of the things I've been looking for, Tori, is to find out if there are some limitations. It looks like at some point in time there was. And it's something that we've been talking about internally about reestablishing those and then better marking those so that if we do allow truck parking, it's, you know, no more than 48 or 72 hours or something like that. So I know that there are some trucks who get parked for weeks. Yeah, so. Yes.
And if it does revolve around, I can definitely get you guys some of that. There are two designated routes. There's a heavy route, there's a long route. And they're both different.
Mhm.
On bridges and getting over the UP main line and so there is a heavy route that comes right down Main Street of Boardman.
Yep.
I think people have been aware of that. It's just, it's kind of more of an official thing now where the coalition has went to ODOT and talked to ODOT about the route, and how to prioritize projects and all of that stuff. So I can provide you guys with that material to help, you know, put it into the.
And we know that the blades that are coming through are too high to go under the freeway overpass, the main street. So they come off. And they tend to be all going eastbound at this point. Sometimes they're going westbound, but at this point they're all going eastbound. So they come off and they either hold on one side or the other. It seems like why, I don't know. I don't know why they just don't come over and keep on going, but it's like they decide to rest at that point too. So sometimes you get some conflict of people, whether they're getting on the freeway or off the freeway.
And there's just, and they have to stop and just eat. It's like this, so they're having to really go slow.
Okay, I hadn't picked up on that piece. Thank you. Yeah, I know the other day I was getting on the eastbound to leave town, so going east. And there was they made it over and they were waiting, they were parked, but there was somebody doing survey work or something. And there was like 2 or 3 trucks there. 2 of them had flashing lights on. And I'm like, am I driving into an accident zone? It was very chaotic. And yet it was clearly 2 different activities, but it was confusing for the driver because you thought the flashing lights was related to the truck. Yeah, I don't know how we get those trucks to, once they get over, to keep on going. But once they get over, there's no place for them really to stop until they get to the next either rest area or to the next truck stop, which is another 20-30 minutes down the freeway. So
They very well likely could be jumping in one pilot car and heading for food or a restroom or anything.
yeah,
I mean, there's 6 people.
yep. Yep, absolutely.
Pay for a place to park.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a sentence.
Yeah. Yep.
Alex, more broadly to your original question, the final TSP will have a freight route map and component to it. So, you know, we'll identify the routes through town that are appropriate for freight movement, both general and in the special categories. So there will be a component in the final TSP that speaks to that. So
Matt,
Okay,
that just
yeah,
brought,
thank you.
that raised a question for me. It's Carla, for those of you online. How much of the current TSP will be preserved, or will any of it be preserved? You're not going to do a red line, I'm guessing. You're going to write a brand new TSP, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I'd say none of your TSP is going to be preserved from a physical standpoint. I mean, mapping and technology has changed. It's all GIS now.
Yep.
So you'll get the GIS files, and I know you've got some capabilities to deal with that, but, you know, I'd say, you know, the TSP, when it was done, probably was great, but the way we look, organize, structure, and build these TSPs, they look a lot different now than they did 10 years ago, for that matter.
Okay.
In the city of Boardman, how does the TSP directly relate to the comp plan? I mean, I'm assuming the TSP has to be in compliance with the comp plan. So are you gonna run into issues with an old comp plan, new TSP wanting to head in one direction, but not?
That's why we're doing all of this at the same time. So our
Also, the comp plan is.
comp plan is also, we've just selected our contractor for our development code and comp plan. We got a little hiccup on getting the contract signed on that, but we will. And so basically your TSP is your goal 12. So the future comp plan is probably going to say very little. It might not say much more than read the TSP. Because with this TSP update, we're going to have an incorporation of the 2 IAMPs, the Main Street Corridor study that we recently did. And then in future updates to those documents, then we'll have to make minor amendments to the TSP to better link them. And of course, all the projects is not going to be identified there. It's going to be fed into our capital improvement plan.
So a couple of different pieces that I'm noticing here. I'm taking some notes. As you talked about earlier, Carla, if you own a trucking company and you can't take your vehicle home, we've got the trucks coming over the overpass. We've got people stopping for meals potentially and nowhere to park. Where do we address that in this, besides going all the way out to the truck lot right out there at Carl's Jr. Loves? Do we have a facility in around Boardman that those trucks can get off the freeway, park for that 24 to 48 hours, get a ride from either the loop or loved ones, get home, get in, get some lunch, and not be blocking the overpasses while they're waiting for the rail yard, or they're waiting to unload or load in one of the potato processing facilities? How can we tie all those pieces together? One of the key things that we've been asked to address is the lack of a park and ride. So if those could be tied together, park and ride with part of it set aside for trucking, right? If I am pulling off and going to park and have a stop on either side of Main Street there at I-84, that's pretty much full of trucks all the time. So my buses getting in and out of there is getting more and more difficult depending on how many trucks are in there. Is that something that's on your guys' plan to address?
Yeah. So Patrick, what I would tell you is next time you're in town, drive our newly opened front south. It would be southeast front, a southeast first connection to Oregon Trail Boulevard. Drive that loop, and in front of the sleep in. In front of the sleep in, look at the new truck parking.
There's also truck parking. So
There is, but it hasn't been
it
improved. And we're actually struggling a little bit with how to do that because the loop will be different and the ability to turn in and park will look different. So Mike's on the phone, he's hearing your comment. But I think what we designed on southeast front is working. It's working well. We're looking in all 4 quadrants how to do that, but that's probably the best quadrant to do it in. But we know we've got another hotel project on the southwest quadrant. We have a hotel project that's been proposed on the northwest quadrant, and we've got 2 potential hotels on the northeast quadrant. Now further down front, not right near the corner. So we know truck parking is going to continue to be a need. And we've been having that conversation internally about how to do that. I think from a priority perspective, how do we figure this out? And then of course, we're also dealing with folks who are trying to figure out what to do with their trucking businesses who live in the West Glen area who have been undergoing enforcement from the county, and they're looking to figure out how, you know, I gotta figure out how to move my business out. I need to do something differently. And helping those folks figure out how that business is better sited someplace else. So yeah, trucking continues, trucking and parking continues to be.
But I have another thought. This is where we maybe have this conversation. Do we want to focus on that inside our city limits? Is that what we want to be known as? It's a great spot to get off with your trucks and stop and stay? Because I feel like all we're doing really now is accommodating local people and not the travelers who are staying in the hotels that are putting money back to our economy. I mean, I'm all for those people who are renting a room and buying food and utilizing our town for that as a truck, but over the people who live here, don't put into as much in our economy down on those areas that have an impact in those parking spots that are taking away from those people who are just passing through. So where's our focus? Do we really want to continue to build our city to meet a trucking demand, or do we want to build our city to make it a more appealing for people to want to move and live here with more amenities and less trucking?
That's what most of the cities in Oregon have done, particularly Madras and Sisters and all of those. With all the center meetings and all that, everything, you used to be able to stop. I grew up in trucking and watched it happen over the last 30 years. And it's go through to the truck stop. That's what cities are doing. So I don't disagree with it, but it's sure not equitable.
I know, I mean, I travel every weekend
Takes
with
a lot
a
of space.
40-foot trailer. I mean, I travel with a truck and trailer. I'm on the road a lot, I get that. But also, I'm going to know that to me, to accommodate, to get something to eat, I'm gonna have to hit a truck stop, or I'm gonna have to hit somewhere else. I'm not gonna expect to be parking downtown of the city. And I expect it because I drive one, so.
So Tori, great conversation. I'm wondering if some of that is part of here, right? You look at the objective statements behind some of these projects, maybe there's some ways we can word some proposed objectives to speak to your interests and needs. Part of it, maybe a thought exercise going forward for how to adjust that. I do want to be mindful, we are 3 minutes out, and I want to make sure we end on time. So I'm going to truncate us off if you don't mind. Two quick things to get through here. I mentioned previously our next meeting, we have a public event occurring in mid-January. That'll be the time we meet again at this PAC level. And then completely voluntary, but for those physically here or those online who are within a short drive, we are going to make ourselves available to go out and do a field visit to any location in town that you would like us to look at, be cognizant of, take pictures of, whatever. So if there's places you'd like to go or want us to see, either come find us at the end of the meeting or let's go get in the car and drive out there. But we'll make ourselves available to do that if there's anybody who has any interest for that. So that, I think we'll leave it at that. Any last minute questions or thoughts from anybody in the room or online? Otherwise, I think we can end for the day.
My input to that would be for those of you that are online and you have a particular place and we can't go do that site visit today, email me where that location is. And I'll make sure that Matt and Isa are aware of it, and then I get some pictures. And if there's a specific time that those need to be captured, let us know as well.
Within the urban growth boundary.
Yeah.
At a maximum. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, if there's like maybe a road that you could see needing to be thoughtfully extended, if and when a UGB expansion were to ever come, that could be worthwhile to look at, but we can only take that planning so far. And the only way I've been able to get through it so far is to put little arrows on a map that just sort of point in that direction, but don't imply that we're actually planning for anything in particular. So. Okay, I don't see any hands or comments, so I think we're done. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you still on, thank you. See you later.
Yeah, we did a big tour of the city earlier today. Yeah. We saw a
Well,
varying
which is
degree of,
great.
yeah, varying